Hello everyone. Today I'm gonna be featuring the tier 8 IGN cruiser, the Atago, one of the oldest premiums in the game. Before I get into the ship though, I do want to highlight that tomorrow on Saturday I will be doing my giveaway. It's gonna be I'm gonna start streaming at 11 AM UTC. I think it's like 12 CET. Basically, if you're in the States, my stream is going to start very early in the morning, but I'm going to be streaming for like 8-9 hours, so basically when you wake up, if you turn it on, it's probably going to be on. If you live in Asia, it's probably going to start around 7-8 PM. If you're all the way down in Australia, maybe like what, 9-10, because you're a bit later down there. But in general, around those times is when the stream will start. You can just, well, you can easily Google what is my time UTC, and then you figure out when I say it's going to start 11 AM UTC on Saturday. It's pretty easy to figure out when it's going to be starting your time. I'll be giving away I think about 260 of those mega Christmas containers, which can contain every single premium ship in the game. That means you can get Belfast, Missouri, Kutuzov, Alaska, Friesland, all of them, Musashi, basically every single premium ship in the game you can get. You can even get the old ones like Gremiashi and Fujin, the old tier 5s, or Nikolai. So I'm gonna be giving away about 260 of those in game, or on the stream, and then I'm also going to be giving away about 30 of those mega containers on my Discord, because some people said, well, we're going to have I don't know if I'm going to be able to catch the stream or if I'm going to have time, so I figured maybe we can do some giveaways overnight. Like after the Saturday stream, we'll do some giveaways on Discord overnight, where all you need to do is take part and then the bot will randomly pick a winner. So my idea is we'll add some giveaways on Discord after the stream. So even those who won't have time to catch the stream, if they have a phone, they can just jump on Discord from there and take part in the giveaway. Anyway, moving on, the Atago, one of the oldest cruisers in the game. You have 10 203mm guns, which have terrible reload. To put it simply, the reload on these things is absolutely dreadful. It's long been honestly known or joked about that the Atago reload is one of the worst reloads in the game, and at 16 seconds it was the worst until they introduced the Amalfi, which also has a 16-second reload. The ship has its fair issues. For example, dodging torpedoes. That might have seemed a bit clumsy. That's because it kind of feels a bit clumsy. The turning circle on the Atago is 790 meters, which is actually some of the worst of all tier 8 cruisers. Even the Mogami has 750. Even Kutuzov has 760. So 790, I think the only one that has a worse one would be... I'm actually not sure who has a worse one than this one. I think there was one ship that had worse, but in general, you're right among the worst ships when it comes to handling. Health-wise though, you got 39.1k, which for a heavy cruiser is okay-ish, but because this is a premium ship, it does have its own unique little gimmick. And that is of course the heal. It gives you much needed sustain. Well, many people have long argued that tier 8 cruisers should all have heals, because well, you face much of the same matchmaking as the tier 9s, but unlike them you don't have access to any heal, which gives you no real sustain. It's a debate for sure, and there is some basis to that argument, absolutely. But the Atago does have access to this heal, which obviously helps it significantly when it comes to sustaining, because Atago is quite squishy. The Citadel is large. It's pretty much a Mogami in terms. It's slightly tankier, but overall it has a large exposed Citadel, and both bow and stern is 25mm. You can get sometimes fairly lucky by not eating as much damage, but in general when you're facing, for example, Massachusetts guns 403s, you want to focus on staying undetected like I am behind the island, instead of just tanking them in the open. The DPM, of course, probably not that impressive either, as you can see. That's because the HE DPM on the Atago is honestly trash. The only ships that have worse DPM is Hipper and Eugen, because their HE is so garbage. But You do have 17% fire chance base, and if you build it for full fire chance, as I have here, then you got a 21% fire chance, which means you actually end up being a pretty good HE spammer. In fact, Atago is probably one of the most notorious legendary first HE spammers in the game, or premium HE spammers, back when Atago was considered frustrating to deal with before, well, things like Kutuzov even existed. But the large HE alpha, combined with the fire chance, and because there was fairly recently, they did a full mechanics change for all IGN cruisers, where IGN cruisers with 203mm guns got improved dispersion. They got the ZAO dispersion patterns. It means, as you can see, the ship is devilishly accurate. This is 15 kilometers away, and if you just look at that cruiser dispersion, it is that ZAO dispersion we're talking about, which means that this ZAO, oh sorry, this Baltimore that the damage on the fire, well, I have no issues targeting him. I'm just applying more and more fires as we go. And that is something that makes the Atago stand out. In fact, I built it. I don't even run the flak module. I've ran full dispersion build here because I really want to make that dispersion shine and stand out. Now, the stealth on the ship is another amazing feature. One of the old ones. 9.3 km concealment with the full build. I think you can get plain concealment down put to 5.8. You need that plain concealment down to 5.8 because Atago is a bit unique in the sense that Atago actually doesn't have a mid-range AA aura. It only has a short range and a long range, and honestly, both of them are absolute and complete trash. We're not talking, oh, this AA is pretty bad. We're talking, you have, I think, maybe a fifth or a quarter of, for example, Baltimore's AA that I recently featured. So you need that concealment and you need those heals to stay alive, because if a carrier targets you, well, you got that fighter plane and that's pretty much it. That's also one of the reasons why I build Hydro instead of defensive AA, because, well, there's so little to actually boost with the defensive AA that it just feels like a complete waste. Hydro is much more useful. Because, well, you can use your stealth to sneak up on ships, sneak up on other cruisers, sneak up on DDs, and the Hydra, of course, helps you with the torpedo threat, because, as I mentioned, the handling on the ship isn't the best. That doesn't mean that it's a slow ship, though. It actually was among the fastest, it still is actually among the fastest tier 8 cruisers. With the speed flag, I think you do 37.3 knots in it. The only ones that really beat that is the French ones with the speed boost, and, of course, the Amalfi. Besides that, you easily leave all the other cruisers in the dust. In comparison, something like a Hipper does 33.6. So doing 37.3, this is of course speed flag values, means that you are very, very fast. There are issues, of course. Only having 33mm penetration when dealing with these new Soviet BBs is not very enjoyable, and because they can damage on a lot of your fires, you're not very good at that either. So obviously this is not a fight I want to take. So how exactly do you play this ship? Well, in general, you want to use your concealment. You want to pick fights that are favorable to yourself. You want to pick fights where they are focused on someone else, like this Vladivostok, and no one is really able to shoot you. You get to take pot shots. Use your speed and concealment to put yourself in these positions where you can harass, and if they start to target you, you stop shooting, you go dark, you disengage. In this case, I am repositioning with two purposes in mind. First of all, I'm trying to burn this, and second of all, I'm trying to figure out what the hell my Lexington is doing. He's for some reason pushing into two ships on this flank, and it really frustrates me when carriers miss position, because carriers, they have the most time of any ship to look at the minimap, because they don't have to pay attention to angling, they don't have to dodge torpedoes, they don't have to dodge shells. They kind of just sit there, and if they look like, oh, well, we're kind of in trouble, then they just click on the minimap with the autopilot and they send their ship to the other end of the map. So that's why it always frustrates me with the one class that has the most time to just basically pay attention to the minimap. When that class isn't paying attention to the minimap and gets himself killed, like here, it makes the game so much more difficult, because we just lost our carrier and here comes the enemy Lexington. I pop the fighter, try to stop him from going for me. Maybe he'll see the fighter and he'll go, nah, I'll go for someone else instead. And now we need to deal with both Atago and the Massachusetts on this flank. Along, if we look at the minimap, there's a threat of the Massachusetts B also pushing up that flank, creating a crossfire. So what I want to do here is, of course, I want to go dark. I want to disappear from vision. You don't want to be fighting multiple ships, you don't want to be crossfired. As I mentioned, the Citadel is large and vulnerable. Yes, you have a heal, but remember that you heal significantly less Citadel damage than you heal any other damage. So you never want to put yourself in a position where you will take Citadels, because it cripples your healing so much. Yeah, I threw a report at him. I'm sorry, I'm not. It annoys me. It really annoys me. It's one of the most frustrating things when they just charge in. I know it probably has to do lately with all these directives and stuff. Actually, no, this game is before that. There's not even an excuse. Don't ask me. I was frustrated. I was annoyed because that made the game very difficult. Now though, we need to stop this push on this flank. It's going to be 2 versus 1, potentially 3 versus 1. The one advantage, of course, you have with this great concealment is that you also have excellent torpedoes. You have 10k in range, 62 knot speed, 17k torpedoes. Now, the angles mean that in order to actually use them, you can't overlay two in the same angle. You always have to be turning your ship. But if you angle a maneuver like I do, basically you turn your ship around, you are able to throw out a total of 16 torpedoes at once. The idea is, of course, I drop some torps on the Massachusetts, I cause a flooding, which he damage cons, and then I use my fire chance to burn him to death. The threat of the Massachusetts B does come true. He's actually pushing down the south. So I know I'm in for some really nasty crossfires here. I tried to drop another set of torps, and then I take a look at the Takao, who's actually giving me broadside. Takao is, of course, the same thing as the Atago. I expert loader. Note, expert loader is a must-have on the ship. It's waiting 16 seconds to ammo switch is just too long. So with expert loader, we cut it down to 8 seconds. And even though the AP penetration on this ship isn't that good, combined with that dispersion, and especially fighting another Takao/Atago, well, you see the kind of damage you can do. 4 Citadels, and he is almost down. I switched to HE because I broke his engine. He's probably going to damage con it, so even if the HE wouldn't instantly kill him, the follow-up fires would most likely do so. No need though, the HE finishes him off and kills him off. I focus the next ship, the target on my flank, low HP, the guy who has my broadside, obviously the bigger threat of these remaining ships. We're down to a 7 versus 6, we have the advantage, but we still need to get rid of this one. There we go, now we get rid of that one, and now there's only 1 ship remaining. I'm tempted to go for torpedoes, but the cooldown is actually quite long, and a common mistake Mogami Atago ship captains do is that they give too much broadside trying to use the torpedoes, and then they get Citadel, and then the guy they're torping actually dodges the torpedoes. You never want to trade guaranteed health for potential damage. And that's what torpedoes are. They are not... Some people think of it, oh, but I'm launching his torpedoes that will probably kill him, so it's okay if I hit a Citadel or 2. No! It's never okay. It's a terrible trade. He's probably going to expect him to dodge them. So what you're going to consider here is that you're taking high-risk maneuvers for very low chances of dealing damage. So that's why only use the back turrets or the back torpedoes if you're going to use them, if you are targeted or if you're spotted, and in this case fighting someone in the open. At this point though, it looks like he's in fact turning away. He decides to disengage, doesn't want the 2 versus 1. So I'm gonna slow down and see if I can maybe get some fires going on this guy. As I mentioned, the combination of fire chance, accuracy means that you don't have too many issues consistently starting fires. There are some issues, of course. The shell velocity is pretty I mean, it's okay, but it's nothing special, and more importantly, your range is very limited. 15.8 km range means that you don't have the easiest time of kiting in the open and creating distance between yourself and your targets. Throwing out another set of torpedoes, hoping I might catch him with these. Basically just throwing out torpedoes whenever they are on cooldown. Note that even if your torpedoes don't hit, if they don't cost you anything, that is, if you're not trading damage to use them, they do force the target to maneuver. Sometimes into positions he doesn't necessarily want to go. Carrier comes in, I reinforce the sector. I don't expect my planes to really do much. I wished I could help this Akatsuki from these rocket planes, but as I mentioned, the AA on this thing is basically a complete joke. It doesn't really do anything. But what you're seeing here is the most basic of basic Atago gameplays, and that is you kite away and you HE spam backwards, especially because you have a long reload. It gives you plenty of time to dodge shells, then swing in and shoot. If he's shooting me, you swing out, you angle, and then you swing in and shoot, and then you swing out and you kite away again. Basically, you constantly weave your rudder back and forth as you're creating distance, and because of the long reload, it doesn't actually cost you DPM to do it. On fast reloading cruisers, every time you turn out, basically you angle, you can't have your guns on your target, and your guns might be reloaded and ready, but you can't use them because of your angling. In the Atago, in general, you're always able to deal the damage that you want because of, well, the very long reload time on the guns. Carrier comes in again to finish the Akizuki. I try to once again reinforce sector. Akizuki finishes off the Massachusetts, but as I mentioned, the AA is really more of a joke than anything. Now I have a suspicion here. I've seen a lot of these planes, even though the carrier hasn't been spotted, I've seen a lot of these planes come from across the islands right in front of me. So I have the suspicion that this carrier has in fact decided to park himself very sneakily right behind the islands and harass us from there. So I'm gonna try to use this Atago speed and close the distance and finish him off before he can do any shenanigans, well, just straight up kill me, to be honest, because, well, getting revenge on the carrier is always a nice thing. I mean, killing carriers, I consider it a greater good for the game. I didn't mention the AP. I mentioned that I Citadel'd the Takao, but I didn't mention actually the AP values. I do want to highlight the fact that Atago and Mogami 203mm AP is actually the worst tier 8 cruiser AP. Oh, heavy cruiser AP. Light cruisers, of course, are worse, but when it comes to heavy cruisers, your AP is the worst. Even Charles Martel has better pen, Admiral Hipper, Eugen, they all have better pen, and then there's Wichita, and then of course there's Baltimore and Amalfi. But Atago is absolutely at the very bottom of the pack with the Mogami. And now the Albemarle might change this, the upcoming British Royal Navy heavy cruiser, but even those shells will apparently maintain penetration better at longer ranges. So in general, unless you get the kind of target that I saw there, which is flat broadside, the most consistent ammunition type to use in the Atago is HE. That's really the thing. Your HE Alpha is great, your HE is very consistent, it's hard hitting, it's fast and with great accuracy, so it's generally what you want to be shooting. And that's mostly what I spend my time shooting in the ship as well. Carrier comes back, this time with torpedo planes, so this time we absolutely pop our fighter plane to try to discourage him from going for us. We're leading, we're 4 ships to 2. I got a bunch of battleships pushing into their spawn, and I see more planes coming in over the island. I'm almost confident he is exactly where I thought he was. Now I'm maintaining my angling here for a second because I'm worried about the plane spotting me and the Massachusetts getting some nasty shots in on me. But at this point, I think I don't have the time to go all the way around the flank. I'm gonna have to push through this narrow passage. Rocket planes, of course, 5k damage, break AA modules, and now I'm being targeted by that enemy battleship. I can't see him, but priority target tells us there are shots incoming. So, obviously, my camera is pointed to the right. Another chunk of damage. Thankfully, this is an Atago, so we do have access to the heal. We can't heal up all of the damage, of course, but we can heal back a chunk of it. That was about 10k from the rocket planes alone, and I know this is just a warm-up. A Lexington can deal a whole lot of damage. And here comes exactly what I was afraid of, and that is those American heavy dive bombers. Atago AA doesn't exist. I check the shell type and I see it's actually HE, so I decide no, I can tank those, I can charge into this gap, because the HE shells can in fact not Citadel me. Note, if I had seen AP from the Massachusetts, then I would have turned to the right. And in such I would have angled against the AP and dodged maybe the HE bombers a bit better, but I would have had to take the longer route around the island. So it's important that you look at the shells when you see them. If they're yellow, it's HE. If they're blue, it's AP. HE, not that big of a threat. AP, well, he can devastate me easily. The HE bombers chunk me hard. I pop Hydro to get an idea of where this carrier is. I know he's somewhere right behind this island. The torpedo bombers come in. From this angle, he will not be able to do anything. I switch to AP because I know that now time is of the essence and I can't really waste too much time. I have to kill off this Lexington ASAP. I'm killing off some planes, honestly fighter planes, not really any of the others. I see the Lexington is gonna go in for a drop on me, but at this point I decide, you know what, he can't take that drop. I will be able to kill the Lexington before he can kill me with those torpedo bombers. I line up on his Citadel. 6 Citadels, 30k damage. I also dropped the torpedoes in case I would die. I eat one of the torpedoes, but it doesn't matter because I know my guns are about to reload. Massachusetts has switched to AP, so we angle in steeply, we close the distance, and the next volley of AP with 5 Citadels finishes off the Lexington. The dive bomber is coming in, I pop my heel. I would like to turn left and dodge the incoming bombs, but I can't afford it because in case the Massachusetts shoots AP. So all I'm trying to do is survive, and my health drops dangerously low to way below 1000. But thanks to the heal ticking, I actually survive that drop, and the game ends. 206,000 damage, Confederate, Dreadnought, high caliber. 19 planes shot down, honestly, probably gonna be mostly fighters. 15 Citadels, most of them on the carrier, obviously. At those close ranges, absolutely use AP on a carrier. Normally HE is more consistent, but as I said, there are always exceptions. Team score wise, 2.7k base. It was a full tier 8 game, which means every single ship in the game was tier 8. These things don't happen too often, but I thought this was... I really like the inclusion of these new types, because you see exactly how well the ship deals with all its competition. Of course, keep in mind Atago is a monster when up-tiered. Unlike many other tier 8 cruisers, it has so much sustain, you can outtrade any other cruiser. Because, well, if a normal tier 8 cruiser, let's say Charles Martel, trades with an Algerie, and the Charles Martel takes, let's say, half his HP pool in damage when he kills the Algerie. The Atago does the same to the Mayoko, but then the Atago heals up afterwards. That heal gives it such an unfair advantage because no one else at the tier really has it. So it is kind of its personal little gimmick. Note that the Mogami has other advantages, especially 155mm Mogami. But more importantly, Mogami has things like better rudder shift, better turning circle, and better HE DPM, even the 203mm version. Still, moving on. Detailed report. HE, main ammunition type, no surprise. 140 HE shells, 71k damage, and also almost a wither worth of fires on top of that. AP, we only shot 24, or got 24 hits, but we got 15 Citadels out of those, so it was AP well used. AA damage, of course, well, 35k, but if we look at actual aircraft destroyed, it was pretty much mostly fighter planes and very little of anything else. 1.4 million potential, but more importantly, damage received 53,000. And that is Atago's specialty, that extra sustain that no other tier 8 cruiser really has. Now let me show you guys my recommended build for the ship. Alright, as usual, let me start with the modules. Not really too much to talk about when it comes to consumables. You can't slot a spotter plane to increase your range, and as I mentioned, defensive AA is not really that valuable, not just because it's been nerfed, but because, well, Hydra is more valuable, but more importantly, your AA is garbage. I mentioned this thing actually has no mid-range AA. It has a short-range AA that deals 133 and a long-range that has 3 puffs by default, 5 if you slot the flak module, and they don't really do too much damage to begin with. So, yeah, your AA is garbage, and I don't bother investing in it. I know it's garbage, and I just play around that fact. Upgrade-wise, turret, torpedo, and turret and torpedo survival. You tend to lose both of them a fair bit, so having this is actually very, very useful. Hydro duration, alternatively, you can run steering gears mod, especially if you're not running last stand, which is something I recommend on Atago, because this thing loses steering gears a lot, especially because of the playstyle of often kiting away and shooting backwards. Better dispersion, I kind of enjoy this because it makes the dispersion hyper accurate, but you can also absolutely run the AA guns mod. But at this point I've basically given up on AA actually doing anything, so I don't bother. Faster rudder shift, because the poor rudder shift is one of the weaknesses. With this you get it down to 6.5. The turning circle is of course still quite dreadful at 790. And finally, concealment system modification, because your concealment is great at 9.3 and 5.8. Captain build wise, of course if you got Yamamoto, Yamamoto is always the nicest to run on any type of ship like this. But priority target, followed by adrenaline rush, followed by superintendent. You actually prioritize superintendent over demo expert on the Atago because you have that one extra heal. Still though, you build concealment expert. That's the first 10 points. After that, I would say, honestly, you want to get last stand pretty damn fast, because this thing does lose its rudder a fair bit. You also want to get the expert loader fast, because the reload on these guns is just so very long at 16 seconds. After that, expert marksman is very, very useful. And only at this point, though, I think you can probably invest in demo expert. And after that, preventive maintenance to help your turrets, your torpedo tubes, your steering gears. All the things that you tend to break a lot. So this, if it was any sort of ranked, tier 8 ranked, I could probably switch in some sort of RPF, maybe trade demo and preventive for RPF. But for random metals, I think this build is pretty much all you need or want. Flag wise, buff your fire chance. You spam so much HE, and it's one of the great benefits of the ship is that high fire chance, 21% with this full build. Add improved healing, add faster speed, and add faster consumables. Then you can mix in other stuff like I've had if you need, or if you want to, but you don't really need them. The ship does well without any of these. Anyways, that was my Atago commentary, a ship I haven't played in a long time. As always, thank you for taking the time to, thank you guys for subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate the support. And as always, if you can take the time to drop a follow on my Twitch, well, you got a pretty damn good reason to do it now, considering the huge giveaway on Saturday. You're gonna have to type in chat to take part in it, which means you kind of have to follow the channel. Aha! Finally! Yes! I will see you guys later. Thank you for joining in.